my dearest friends, I thought I would go ahead and get a day ahead of the readings. Please, I want to ask you to excuse my dog's noises in the background in advance because they're like children and demand my attention when I'm not available. So it's usually not too very annoying, but just to give you a heads up. And if we can come together in prayer, and if you'd like to close your eyes. Dear God, please enable me to set aside everything I think I know about everything, about you, about the Course, every idea and judgment I have. Please help me to release it, God. Please lead me and help me to be a conduit of love and light, and open me up to hear and see and learn the truth. Thank you, God. Amen. All right, so today's reading is Cameo 2. It's for day 3. My strength will support you. On the morning of October 21st, 1965, near the very beginning of the dictation of the miracle principles, right after Principle 3, Helen had a revealing exchange with Jesus, one that tells us a great deal about him as a teacher. Jesus: you are breaking communication by thinking it's cute. This is not wrong, but it diverts your attention. Breaking is either a misspelling or a pun. And we're going to look down here at 1. All quotations with page numbers in this Cameo are from Helen's notes. Throughout those Cameo essays, we have corrected spelling errors in the notes for ease in reading. Jesus is surprisingly agreeable about Helen's thought that it's cute. The problem with that thought is not that it's false, nor that it's bad. The problem is simply that it diverts her attention away from what he is saying. Helen has something to learn from him. It's vital, therefore, that she pay attention. Helen: that's true. Jesus: of course it's true, and I'm really glad you got the idea. I'm not angry when this kind of thing happens, but the lesson deteriorates under lack of focus. Please read these 3 points with corollaries as often as you can today, because there may be a quiz this evening. This is merely to introduce structure, if it is needed. It is not to frighten you. There is not a trace of sternness or judgment here. Jesus is not angry when Helen's attention is diverted, and he freely expresses his happiness when she gets what he's trying to say. He is entirely on her side. He just wants her to learn, period. It's not about appeasing him. It's about her own learning. For this reason, he urges her to read and reread the first 3 principles throughout the day, because there might be a quiz that evening, although there is no evidence of such a quiz actually happening. He reassures her that this is not meant to frighten her into submission. It's just meant as a useful structure that will help her learn. Helen: well, would you regard this as a kind of miracle, maybe? Jesus: you better reread them now. There is nothing special or surprising about this at all. The one thing that happened was the universal miracle, which was the experiences of intense love you have felt. Don't get embarrassed. Your text adds by the idea of love. Things that are true are not embarrassing. Embarrassment is only a form of fear, and actually a particularly dangerous form, because it reflects egocentricity. No, don't think of how Bill will find this fascinating either. I told you to reread them, and you did not. Helen, I am now. Helen's attention has been diverted again. Ignoring the instruction to reread the first 3 principles, she asks if communicating with him could be considered a miracle. This is an understandable reaction. Guess who's on my arm? She is, after all, having a conversation with a voice that claims to be Jesus. He finds a way to answer her question, while at the same time, I apologize, my dog Greta is knocking into me, while at the same time drawing her back to his focus. He says, in effect, if you reread the first 3 principles, you'll see that the ability to communicate with me is not a miracle, that a miracle is an expression of love. Therefore, your experiences of intense love were experiences of the universal miracle. This probably refers to the preceding summer, in which Helen had a number of experiences of being in a crowd, and feeling a brief but powerful affinity. 39 and 2, 39, it's from the book. Again, all quotations with page number references in this Cameo are from Helen's autobiography. For the full reference, see footnote 1 in Cameo 1. The great thing about watching a video is you can pause it. So if you need to pause at any time and want to look up any of this information, please do. So let me start that sentence over. This probably refers to the preceding summer in which Helen had a number of experiences of being in a crowd and feeling a brief but powerful affinity with everyone there. One such experience, she said, that a sudden sense of deep emotional closeness to everyone there swept over me. At the mention of these experiences, Helen becomes embarrassed by the love she felt, a theme that will crop up repeatedly in the early dictation. This represents yet another diversion. Helen is pulling away from his teaching into self-concern. Rather than offering reassuring sympathy, therefore, Jesus quickly pops the bubble of her embarrassment. It is not humility, he says, but rather dangerous egocentricity. She then pulls away, yet again, musing to herself about whether Bill will find this fascinating. Jesus again brings her back to the task at hand. I told you to reread them, the principles, and you did not. And finally she yields, I am now. This seems to set the stage for the touching communication that follows. Jesus, do not feel guilty about the fact that you are doubting this. Just reread them and their truth will come to you. I love you and I am not afraid or embarrassed or doubtful. My strength will support you, so don't worry and leave the rest to me. Jesus now addresses what probably lurks in the background behind all her diversions. Helen is feeling guilty about doubting his teaching. As a solution, he again brings her back to what he has asked her to do 3 times already. Reread them. If she just does that, the truth of the principles will come to her, and her doubts will be vanquished. Helen's guilt over her own doubt seems to be part of a larger feeling of inadequacy as a learner, for that is what Jesus speaks to next. Her fear, embarrassment, and doubt all erect barriers to her learning. As long as those feelings are there, how can she really learn what he's teaching? She can, implies Jesus, because he is there, and he not only loves her, as he openly tells her, but he is also free of all the barriers that hold her back. I am not afraid or embarrassed or doubtful. Therefore, she can just relax and lean on his strength. Do not run to Bill to tell him. There will be time, but don't disrupt things. I'll arrange the schedule. You have a lot to do today. Get dressed or you will be late. But when you do see Bill, be sure you tell him how much he helped you through by giving you the right message. And don't bother with worrying about how you received it. That doesn't matter either. You were just afraid. Here is yet another diversion. Helen wants to run off and tell Bill what has happened. But rather than Jesus urging her yet again to reread the principles, time has moved on, and the priority is now for her to get dressed and get to work. We might expect him to urge her to stay with this momentous happening, talking to Jesus, and get to work late. Instead, however, he shows that he is concerned with the rest of Helen's life. As important as their communication is, he doesn't want it to get in the way of her other responsibilities. He even offers to arrange the schedule for her. Then he shows his concern for Bill. Helen later wrote in her autobiography that when Jesus first began dictating the course to her, she called Bill in a panic, saying that the voice she had been hearing was now using very specific words and seems to want to go on for some time. Bill made a simple and very practical suggestion. Try and write some more and see what happens. Jesus' comment above seems to be a reference to that phone call. If so, then Helen apparently didn't receive that suggestion very gracefully at the time. And Jesus wants Bill to know just how apt it was. And he wants Helen not to feel guilty for responding ungracefully. That doesn't matter either. You were just afraid. Here, at the very beginning of the course, we have a revealing glimpse of how Jesus, the teacher, relates to his students. Helen, as we have seen, gets caught up in various diversions. This is cute. Is this a miracle? I feel embarrassed. I wonder what Bill will think. I've got to run and tell Bill. Many of these diversions, it seems, come down to one thing: an understandable fascination with the idea of Jesus Christ dictating a course in miracles to her. It is like a celebrity showing up at your class who has an important message to deliver. But all you can think about is the fact that a celebrity is standing there right in front of you. In the midst of Helen's very human reactions, Jesus holds fast to a single agenda: to get across his teaching. He is as focused as she is distracted. Therefore, no matter in what direction she pulls away, he keeps pulling her back to the principles he has just dictated to her, telling her again and again to reread them. He even asks her to do so throughout the day because there might be a quiz. He doesn't ignore her questions or her doubts. Rather, he tells her that she'll find the answers in the very principles he is asking her to study. Even though he stays firm with the agenda, he makes it abundantly clear that this has nothing to do with her doing what the authority says in order to be good or in order not to be bad. This is only about her learning. Thus, no matter what she says, he does not get angry with her. And rather than inducing fear or guilt in her to spur her into doing his bidding, he actively tries to relieve those feelings. When he needs to correct her, he follows this with reassurance. This is not wrong. I am not angry. And when she does receive his teaching, he is quick to tell her how glad he is. He wants nothing, not her distractions, not her embarrassment or doubt or guilt, and not any needs she imagines he has to get in the way of her learning. He is there purely for her. His whole demeanor reinforces this impression. He is present, engaged, and clearly concerned. He tells her how he feels about her reaction. I'm really glad you get the idea. And he tells her how he feels about her. I love you. And he explains himself. He does not leave her in a state of mystery, having to trust in his almightiness, but rather tells her plainly why he says what he does. The lesson deteriorates under lack of focus. The lesson deteriorates under lack of focus. This is merely to introduce structure if it is needed. He even offers to make up for any lack she may have as a learner. As he explains toward the end, he is free of all these lacks. Thus, no matter how inadequate she may feel, she can rest on his love and strength. Let go of her worry and leave the rest to me. This snapshot of Jesus' will to teach meeting Helen's desire to pull away surely applies to more people than just her. What student of the course does not get drawn off into diversions and distractions? And when that happens to us, we can envision that the same teacher that was there with Helen is here with us. Single-mindedly, yet patiently and loving, drawing us back to his teaching. That is absolutely beautiful, and I'm so grateful you're here with me reading day 3. And this, I wouldn't have included this, but I feel like a lot of people from the group are here, so I hope it's okay that I am including the reading from Emily. Day 3, Cameo 2, My Strength Will Support You. If you're not in this group, Course Companions, you can look for it on Facebook. Then you can stop this video. If you are, we can read this together. This essay opens with a conversation between Helen and Jesus where she dictates the ways in which she is distracted from what he's trying to teach her. If you've been having difficulty meditating on the phrase, "Here I am, Lord," perhaps you can relate. It seems the more we try to harness our own mind, the more we tend to find it anywhere but here. That said, perhaps there's something more going on than just undisciplined thinking. In the essay, for example, we learn that Helen feels guilty about doubting the material coming through. As a result, her doubt has also caused her to feel embarrassed about the process of scribing the course, and that embarrassment has led to an inability to focus. Does this sound familiar as well? If so, Jesus' response to Helen may be of benefit. Do not feel guilty about the fact that you are doubting this. I love you, and I am not afraid or embarrassed or doubtful. My strength will support you, so don't worry and leave the rest to me. As we'll learn a bit later in the text, distraction and outright dismissal are what we often do to a message that frightens us precisely because we're so powerfully drawn to it. In other words, it's far easier to say this can't be true than to evolve into the people we'd need to be to know it is. My strength will support you. Questions to consider. Are you ever embarrassed by your faith? Do you ever find yourself getting distracted in times you've set aside to study? Are you all in when it comes to the course, or are you holding back because a part of you is afraid to believe it? Write what comes to you in the space below. When you've finished, take a few moments to prayerfully turn over any fear or resistance you have to Jesus or your inner guide, if you prefer that language, knowing that his strength will support you. I'm so very grateful. I'm not quite sure if this was intended to be read on day 3, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. Is A Course in Miracles really a channeled text? given that we are being asked to believe Jesus himself authored a spiritual manual in the 20th century and through a New York psychologist no less, it's fair to pause at this point and critically reflect on whether we should accept the Course's claim of being channeled material. Who is Helen Schucman after all? Because when we hear the word scribe, we tend to think of a cloistered monk dutifully capturing revelations with utmost reverence and humility. We expect our scribes not only to be devout, but also to have lived at a time where history has long since erased any evidence of their all too human imperfections. But Helen lived recently, which means there are many people alive today who knew her. And as the range of Cameo essays detail, those who knew Helen agree that she could be both very kind and very mercurial. Accordingly, are we to trust her story? While Helen didn't grant many interviews or speak in public much, when she was asked once about whether the Course was true, her response was telling. I know it's true. I just don't believe it. In other words, Helen understood the authenticity of the Course, but she was unable to consistently practice it in her own life. What is also telling, according to Robert, is that looking on her notebook pages when she dialogues with Jesus, she's clearly responding to a voice that she perceives as very much not her own. Furthermore, her editing shows that she often didn't grasp the teaching being given to her. It has a wisdom and originality that had never been seen before, even among the greatest philosophical thinkers in history. As you read the first few Cameo essays, you'll notice that Helen's grappling with the material is obvious. Yet, after 7 years of scribing and eventually coming to view this as her life's work, it is also interesting to note that Helen didn't capitalize on her unique ability or the Course itself. In fact, even at her own funeral, neither the Course nor her role in bringing it to the world were ever mentioned. Wow. I love you. Thank you for joining with me. Have a beautiful day.